Okay, so this is going to be a quick video or two going through all of the projects, looking at what could be updated and uh, what feedback to implement, and this will serve as an explanation for what your grade is and what you can update in the project if you do a review or a revision. I'm sorry. So we'll start with Bram. Bram, you have listed. You'll most likely do redo the entirety of the project. So we'll only pop it up here briefly. And I think you understand what to do. It's mainly just text. And so, you kind of have a grasp on probably where to go on this. I'd be really interested in meeting with you and talking about your design and what it is you're kind of wanting to get across. I mean, I get what you're wanting to get across, but kind of how you want to illustrate that, because it can be heavy in text, but just kind of playing with it to make it a good design and not just text on a shirt, I think is important. So that will hopefully that makes sense. Let's go, Christina. Open this up really quick. Okay, so I thought that you were working on a revision. Let me make sure there's not a revision in this folder for you. Nope. Okay, I thought I saw you working on a revision. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe it was a different class. So I think overall you kind of got good information from the critique. I think FIDE up here is fine. I think that this piece down here is feeling a little. One, it's a little low. And two, it's a little sketched, like it feels a little unfinished. So I think that if we get in here and close, you're seeing stuff like this. You're seeing sort of a. So I think just cleaning that up, cleaning up how the text is written in there, just to kind of make that feel a little more finalized. Kind of the same thing going on here. You get a little bit of overly sketchiness here. I think you could just refine that a little bit. Overall, as this communicates, I'm alright with the white background, but it's stuff like, these just kind of disappear. And so maybe that would have worked better if you're wanting a highlight down there to use a blend on those. And I think some of this just isn't communicating. Like the eyebrows are a little too harsh and sketchy, and it's just kind of confusing the face. This X doesn't. I mean, I go look at the Xbox logo and really try to make that read as the Xbox logo. This I think could have some information on it that reads more like a PC, and right now it's like this is the only thing we really get is sort of this implied drive. You get this line under here, and I guess you got that one there too, but they're not really reading as, and these aren't really reading as like cheek lines. So yeah, just kind of playing with that. A lot of the line width is very similar, and then this controller just feels like it's a sort of a skewed version of this first controller, which I believe is probably what happened there. So I think there's just a lot of cleanup you could do on this one to really tighten this one up. So and I also think this like fading into I think that you're using a gradient to get a change in color, but it's not always an accurate change in color. So for example, if this were just black, I'm not really sure what's happening there. So like if you're trying to communicate the arm, and you're just wanting I mean this is obviously going to be a little simple, but you're wanting a highlight down the arm, just having, something like, where are we at? There. So just doing something like that, like, and getting a little bit more of the feel that you are wanting out of it, rather than just what Illustrator hands you as an option for a gradient. So really just kind of playing around with like the contours of it. You got some nice stuff going on with the eyes, and some of this detail work in here looks really nice, but Some of this just feels like it's still a little in the sketch phase, not in sort of the final illustration phase. Okay. Nope. Courtney. I think we talked about yours. I don't, here, I might have to flip it. Just so we can get a better idea of it. So overall, yours is working pretty well. I think it communicated. People got it. The 2D image here is actually reading a little more clearly. Again, I think I would put a little bit of a shadow or something underneath this just to sort of pop it off that pink. Those are such bold colors that it almost vibrates there. I would consider looking into some different UI, or just researching a little bit with UI, and that like this is solid white across here, and so even with like if we look up, let me look one up here, button, iPhone, no, we'll call it icon. I know you can't see this, but I'll drag it over here. So just UI kind of has a really interesting design at times, and just so looking into this and saying what is it that makes these feel like UI elements instead of real elements. So could it be something like this has a glare on it, or this has a highlight on it, implying that, or is this just not solid white all the way across? Is maybe this not solid gray all the way across? Same with maybe this green here. UI is kind of built to help communicate what is clickable, what is touchable, what is communication, what is all of that. So I think it needs a little bit more of that, and it may just be a little bit of research on that. And I think that in terms of visualization of this as a device, we need to pop that out into the real world a little bit more. So if we had something like a little bit of something like that on it, does that just add a little bit more, and it doesn't have to be white, it could be some more of this gray color and get just a little bit more of that. Like, is this giving us a little bit more depth to this object? So just playing around a little bit with that. We can keep going all the way in here to really low detail. Is that like a little highlight on that? That's probably a little much. I would tone that down color-wise. So just playing a little bit with that and sort of how the viewer is supposed to see that. Is this green thing here supposed to be seen as forward in depth from this terrain on here? And so I would just play around with it a little bit more, just to kind of round it out a touch. No, I do not want to make changes. Let's see. Jessica, look at me. This is the PDF. Okay, I remember now. This is, you were worried about the text not getting across. Let's see if the text does come across too. Continue. Okay, so this is the piece. Let me zoom out a little bit. Okay. This is nice. I wonder if this, no, I don't think you've implemented the changes yet. I think this is actually a really good point on this. And you're right, the print didn't do it justice. I stand by. I think that this stuff down in here, or this background kind of cutting off right here, and then all of this being empty. Although I get what you're going for. I think that you could actually sort of pull all that forward and have it happening all the way up into the foreground here a little bit. And just sort of playing around with some of that. Maybe just like kind of having these overlap a little bit. I'm not exactly for sure what to do specifically, but I do think that there's a lot you could play around with that to get overlap, so it's not as segmented where we have this like top, middle, and the bottom. The reason I say that is because I think just a little bit of overlap, especially in these two sections, the middle and the top, would just kind of tie it together, because this is just feeling a little empty other than the characters, if that makes sense. We're losing a touch of the character's shoulders here, and we're losing... I don't know what to say to do about that, like whether it could be something in the background that causes that to pop out. I don't think you want to put highlights on this to kind of pop it out. But I do think that there's something that needs to happen to kind of pull those out just a little bit more. I like the text treatment here, and I like a lot of this, the style of this stuff here. So yeah, otherwise I think that's looking pretty good. I would consider this guy's pose or angle. I don't necessarily know what's going on there. It feels like it could be a touch more masculine. And I don't necessarily know what that... But I don't know. I mean, I know you're really pushing this feminine masculine ambiguity, androgynous thing here, and so like, I don't know. It's I don't want to say push it really masculine, but I do think that that's part of the feel you're going for, and it may just be that the way the feet or the legs or something is just looking a little bit more effeminate. Maybe the way the elbow's tucked in a little bit. So there's some stuff I think you can kind of play around with on there to kind of make this side feel a little more masculine. This is feeling appropriately feminine, and this is feeling very androgynous, and I like this character a lot. Also, I think it's kind of the person is kind of walking toward us. So yeah, this is working really well. Let's see what it does to the text. Yeah, I don't think that's the same text. So you get the idea on that. Oh, I didn't mean to close the whole program. Okay, Judith. After critique, I guess this is the revised version, 243. Yeah. Oh yeah, this is Nanopos. I remember this. Sorry. Let me pause the. If I pause the video, it'll crash. Okay, Nanopos. Okay, looking good. I like the revision quite a bit. We can see. I don't have a ton of negative feedback on this. I actually think it's working really well. I think that there are certain areas that are working really, really well, and that is stuff like this, like right in here with this, this overlap and this drop shadow. I really like how this shadow is working. And I think some of the shadow stuff's working really nicely with sort of this crisp, cartoony shadow. You got a nice line weight style going on here. I'm curious how you're doing that. Let me look here and see if you're doing that with a so you're getting that, and then you're overwrapping, lighting it. That's nice. You just got a really interesting variable width stroke. I like that. Cool. I think there's a couple areas where I'd like to see a little bit more control in it. So like here, like I think of when you have variable line weight, you often want it to represent something. So like people will put a slightly darker line on the opposite or on the side where a shadow is cast. So if there's a lot of light hitting from one side, then the other side you will get a little bit of a darker line, and then on the side where the light is hitting, you'll get a bit of a lighter line. And I don't really get that that's the effect here. So like this line feels awfully thick right through here, and then parts of this, which I would have thought would be kind of in shadow, and even is in shadow here, gets a little thin. having said all that, that's me kind of nitpicking and really looking for something to critique on. Uh, this is looking good here. I still think that maybe get just a touch more of a gap in there if you could. Maybe a little bit like that or something. But I think that you did a pretty good job at avoiding it, like here. I mean, you maybe could still pull that in just a touch more. Something like that. Um, yeah, I think that will help a little bit. But I think overall this is looking really good. Yeah, I think that the outline thing is the only small note that I have, but that's very, very small. This is actually very good, and so I'll leave it at that. I think you're in a good spot here, and I think that I like the addition of the two other tentacles. I think that those weren't there in the first version. So, all right, good work. Let's go ahead and close this one. Open up Justin. Okay, and so yeah. Um, Sorry, I'm just kind of looking at it right now. I'm not. Don't take my ums for critique. Okay, so I thought you'd made changes to this last class, so but this is we'll run with this. A couple things I notice that I think need a little bit of tweaking. One is I think you're working on this wrapping of the letters here. I think you can kind of make that wrap around a little bit more evenly. The Sochi 2014 strap that happens here. I think if this had just a little bit of like depth to it, so all of this other stuff is like print on the shirt, and then these are intended to feel like real lines. I feel like it's a little like the metal is a little large, so it gets a little cartoony. But I feel like you could, yeah. But I feel like the metal and the straps could kind of have a little bit more depth to it, like as if they were casting a shadow on the shirt. Um, Having said this, oh, and I guess the other little thing I would say is the back here where the inside of the shirt. I think that would probably be, well, I don't know. I don't know how this would actually have to be printed if it could actually be made. Um, I was going to say I think that would be white and that this would be a print all over it, but that would be a pretty stiff shirt if it was. Um, so we kind of went back and forth, and I feel like the biggest struggling point on this one is that um, you had what I thought was a pretty simple and pretty elegant. Um, I don't want to use the word elegant. That may be too strong. It was a pretty well thought out though concept for this, and that you were going to go with this sort of this T-shirt that had the impression that you were wearing a gold medal as opposed to, or like, similar to the T-shirts that are look like a tuxedo, so it looks like people are wearing a tuxedo. Um, so I thought that that's kind of what you were going for, and then we added in the American flag motif in the background, and it got a little busier and a little more muddy. And then we added the you had considered like the eagle idea and like that, and so I feel like you kind of got off track a little bit. And so I think the biggest thing on this one was just to kind of refocus and kind of say what are we trying to communicate with the T-shirt. And so in this case, the metal it's a pretty good representation of the metal, and the straps are working pretty well. But then like the American flag stuff gets a little strong, so it's kind of hard to tell so now it's the impression is that it's a metal on top of an American flag T-shirt, and so that gets a little muddy. I think what I would do is if you're wanting that, you really need to make this metal feel like it's popping out of the shirt, like it's really not just like text on there, but maybe like you, or not text, but text and lines on there, but you have a little bit of a shadow or a little bit of depth to it. Maybe like the edge of the metal could be seen around it, and you can kind of see the 3D volume of that. Maybe a little bit more of a highlight across it or something. Um, and just make these elements feel more real, while the T-shirt still feels like a T-shirt print, if that makes sense. So, okay, we're going to look at Krista. Trying to final together legacy. Okay. And so I saw you actually working on a revision of this, and so a lot of my notes that I'm going to say, I think you actually kind of have covered in the revision, which is I think you need more books in here, really flesh out this bookshelf and make it feel a little more finalized. I think it does need to be on a color of some sort, or at least to see what the effect will be once it's on a solid color, not not white, because then we get this loss of like, what is the skin, what is the T-shirt. So I think that the color will help. I think probably keeping the character's skin tone as white, or doing a flesh tone would work fine as well. I think getting in here close, there's some things you can do to really kind of help make this feel a little bit more like a sketch, which would actually be, if we have this curve selected, instead of doing uniform, maybe doing something like that, and just switching it to that line profile, and just playing around with that to see what you get with some of the lines. I don't really like that one as much, but so I mean, you can kind of play around with that a little bit to get some slightly more interesting lines, maybe, and make it feel a little less like it was made in Illustrator. So I think this is another good example where you could do that. And so just those little things will kind of take that sharp computer edge off of it, and really give you kind of a little bit more of a so something like that, a little bit more of that, like, I don't know why my mouse keeps, whenever time I hit the space button, it makes a dinging noise in my ear. So also we're getting little things like this. We could finish connecting that in there, or do you want to do it like that? So it's really just playing with that, going in here and making sure all the little cleanup stuff is there. So you get a lot of like overlap in there, and although we may not see it from here, when you print it on this size for a T-shirt, I think you will. I also kind of agree that I think most of this stuff here could be sort of scaled down a little bit. Maybe something like that, and maybe even push it off to one side a little bit more. There you go. So I think somewhere in this range is probably going to feel a little bit better. But overall, I think you got most of that from the critique in your last I saw you were implementing of that. So, okay, Sinya. Let's see what we got here. Oh yeah, 3 different versions of it. I will say the version I liked the most is the one yellow with Mao on the text here. My input about the text in a different language is kind of, I don't know. I liked it in English, and I can see the point of doing it in that other sorry, I'm looking at something here. I can see the point of doing that in the other characters, but I don't know if I feel like it's necessary if you're selling it in to English speakers, because sometimes I think that having like Chinese or Japanese characters or foreign language on your shirt is almost like it feels like a little bit of a trendy thing, like when people got the like Chinese characters for like love tattooed on their arms and stuff like that. It just kind of has a little bit of a kitschiness to it. I'm noticing a little bit of a gap here, and here. You could possibly clean up a little bit, especially on the when we're looking at the stuff in yellow. Um, so actually, you know what that is? I bet I have that selected. I thought that was one piece. I don't know what that is. Um, oh, you have a compound object. Okay. But that would be some of my only comments on this. I also think that there's a chance I get a little confused about what's going on in the mouth there. Is this his bottom lip? Or is this the line that goes into his mouth? Like, is this the line divide? So maybe just a touch more information there. But just a touch. But that's the only real spot that I see that I think could be clarified a little bit more. So overall, I like it. Okay, let's move on. Mike. Oh, okay. Okay, let's try that with the font. Oh, and I know you're actually working on a revision of this one as well. So I think most of the notes that you got in class, doing, are probably going to cover what I would have to say here. Let's go and install it though. And there we go. So I saw some of the changes you made. I really think that that's helping a lot, and so I think that just implement those changes. I think that'll really help. I think that you can work a little bit. Like, you got some nice stuff going on in here. The flames are looking good. This drop shadow is looking good. This highlight across the window is looking good. Then this is feeling a little flatter on the top up here. And yeah, I think you need a little bit more communication, rocket science. This blank ain't, or um, do you have it like the rocket is like censoring the word, or so I think that needs a little bit more communication work there, but I think that you're already addressing that as well. So okay, I'm going to go and stop the video here just to make sure I have enough, make sure it doesn't crash. So I will get back with the rest of them here in a minute.